So we are going to be giving Shay a little makeover today. Give us a little twirl.
Let's go, let's leave, let's hit, let's go. Holy hair, let's go, let's go, let's go.
So she has some grown out roots going on, and then we do have a little bit of breakage happening. And this is why us hairstylists talk about the importance of at-home care. So we'll use Shayna as an example. She was really, really good about doing her at-home care, and granted, when we bleached her up, when we did her blonding sessions, she did have some metallic dye built up on the ends of her hair, so we knew we were going to have some breakage. We took some length off, but we wanted to get her blonde, but it's really not that bad. I told her, like, it's really not terrible. It's just kind of this top section here. And so we're gonna work with it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut off a little bit of her length so that it won't be too much of a disconnect. We might possibly down the road order in a few extensions to fill in this little area here, but we're gonna see how it looks after we do a little bit shorter of a cut. So the cut is gonna sit just on her shoulders. We're just going to bring up some highlights, bring down some lowlights, and just kind of give everything a nice refresh.
Can't wait.
So I've got everything all mixed up. I'm actually going to be using the Guy Tang Big 9 because I love how gentle it is while lightening, and I'm going to be using 20 volume for her highlights, and then for her lowlights I am just going to keep it simple with Shades EQ 7N because we know that she has a ton of warmth on her undertones, so we're not going to need to add any warmth in. Typically with a platinum blonde you would want to add a little bit of warmth in when you're doing lowlights, but in this case we know that she has a lot of warm undertones, so we're just going to go in with a 7N neutral. And then I'm going to be using my magical Framar comb. Okay, so we're going to be starting in the back of her hair, and I am going to bring down some lowlights back here so that we don't have too much of a contrast here. And so I'm going to start weaving through some lowlights with the Framar weaving comb. If you have not tried this new Framar comb, it is a lifesaver. It just saves so much time. You don't have to go through and weave your own highlights. And I just feel like it's like having an assistant. So as we can see, her roots are grown out about 1.5 inches, so we're just going to go in with our low light color and apply this. And this is going to diffuse her line of regrowth, and so we'll probably take a couple appointments to get her completely diffused as far as the regrowth and kind of get her color exactly where we want it. But for right now, we're just going to go through and kind of diffuse some of those, diffuse with some lowlights, and then bring up some highlights, and that is going to give us a really, really natural look. So I'm taking fairly large sections because we still do want to leave in some of the blonde, and it's okay to have some root because she's wanting a rootier look to her hair color anyways. So we're definitely still leaving some hair out in between, but diffusing this line of regrowth. I'm using here a semi-permanent color, which is Shades EQ. When you're covering blonde, you don't need to use a permanent color, because the only reason why you would use a permanent color is to open the cuticle. So 10 and 20 volume opens the cuticle, but when the hair is already bleached, the cuticle is already open. So it's actually going to take this semi-permanent color as a permanent when you're going in with the lowlights. So we don't need to worry about using any kind of developer for this because it's going to take like a permanent color. And you actually do have more fade out when you do use a permanent color on blonde because you're blasting open that cuticle way more than it needs to be. So if you think about the cuticle being wide open, it's gonna take the color really well, but it's also gonna let go of the color really fast as well. Really, it's actually worse to use permanent color on a blonde when you're doing low lights because the cuticle is gonna be so blasted open that it's not even going to hold the color into the hair follicle. So I kind of got into bricklaying her lowlights and then coming up to the crown of her hair. I'm gonna start with a few highlights up here, and I'm just going to do a few because we just wanna, like I said, diffuse this line that we have going on and get her a little more of a softer grow out. So when working with the front sections here, I kind of just split her hair down the middle. I'm not doing a mohawk section. I'm just working with her hairline, and then I'm working up from the sides onto the top of her head. So I'm wanting to give her some face frame highlights. So this is what I'm doing in the front here, and I'm just being very gentle with her hairline because she does have some breakage around her hairline. I'm using my Frame Art weaving comb, and this is going to give us some really nice diffusion with her highlights to give that really natural root. It kind of gives you almost like a teasy light look without having to do any of the work of the teasing, and you're able to get all the way up to the root. So that's really, really cool. If you have not tried one of these combs yet, I'll leave a link in the description box. You got to check it out. So going through doing majority highlights around her hairline here, and then I'm going to alternate highlight low light going into her side sections here. And then I decided to do a root shadow in between all of her foils, and I didn't decide this until I was like almost done foiling. So I actually went through and went between all of the foils in the back, and I just root shadowed down, and I used the same formula that I did for her low light, just 7N with Shades EQ, and that's just going to give a softer look on all of the rest of her grown out roots. So as you can see right there, I went kind of at a diagonal. So at a certain point coming into connecting the side section to the top section, you kind of have to work with the head shape and go a little bit diagonal. So that's what I did there. And then I just worked my way all the way up to the top, continuing this kind of diagonal pattern until I finished with her top section. And I actually finished with a section on top with the root shadow. So you'll see when I finish foiling what everything looks like, and I just went through kind of alternating highlight, low light, and then some of the low lights I only brought down halfway, and that's just like my kind of just artistic way. I always say I go where the hair takes me, so that's where I kind of just use my artistic eye and take each section, and I kind of create a really natural look by only shadowing down halfway with some of the lowlights and then pulling some of the lowlights all the way through and then alternating with the highlights. So I'm going to finish this up and then let her process. So she processed for about 25 minutes and her hair lifted really nicely with the Guy Tang Big 9. So we're ready to pull everything and get her all rinsed. A little tip that I always like to, share with all of my fellow stylists is after you pull the foils, make sure you rinse the hair thoroughly. You can shampoo, and then what you want to do after that is you want to towel dry the hair really, really good, and you want to give a good look at what the hair looks like after it's towel dried before you mix up your gloss, because we want to see what's going on, what kind of tones we have going on before we mix anything up. So you don't want to pre-mix just in case you see some things that you want to correct later. So we've got her all rinsed. She did pull a little bit warm, which is totally fine. We're going to tone everything. She's not that warm, but there's just a little bit of warmth in here. You can see her raw lift. It looks really good, but we want to give her like a really cool vibe. So I'm going to mix up 9P with processing solution. I think that's all I'm going to do. It's just a overall 9P for this, and I think that'll give her the perfect cool tone. And I don't think I'm going to do a root shadow because I didn't do that many highlights, so she's still gonna have a shadowed effect since her roots were so grown out. And since the way that I did the highlights, they're gonna look really natural. We're not gonna need to root shadow everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up her gloss. Okay, so for her gloss, I'm gonna just mix up Redken Shades EQ 9P. And I'm doing level 9 because we want this to be really natural. We don't want it to be too crazy bright. And also she lifted a bit warm. So the P, I feel like, works so well to cancel out warmth, and like way better than 9V. Obviously, like for years and years, 9V was like the only option to cancel out warmth. And so now we have all these other fun options, and P just gives you such a pearlescent look, and it just looks so natural, and it doesn't look too ashy because we still want her to look bright. Like, we want those highlights to pop, but at the same time we want to tone everything and cancel out all of the warmth. So that is what the 9P is going to give us, and we're just going to keep it simple and use one formula. So I'm gonna put this on all over her hair, root to ends, and then let her process for 20 minutes, and then we're gonna do her cut, and I cannot wait for you guys to see this after. Heading over to do her haircut, I decided to do her haircut dry just because I want to make sure this is laying right on her shoulders. And if you ever have someone that you are doing this kind of cut on where you want it to lay in a very specific area and they have porous blonde hair, it's better to do it dry just because the hair springs up a lot from wet to dry. So if you cut this wet, it could end up being slightly too short. And also I wanted to put a lot of texture in there to blend that breakage in with some layers. So that's what I did, and I'm doing a ton of point cutting. I fast forward to this a lot so that this video wouldn't be super long, but I just went in and I did a ton of point cutting, ton of texture, and gave her a gorgeous, cute cut. All right, so here's Shay's after. I love how natural and blended her rooted look is, and this length is so cute on her. I did some texture to help blend that breakage and give her just a soft, cute cut. A little bit shorter, but just super fun and cute for summer. I think this tone is really pretty.
Yeah, I do too. I really like it. I can't believe how quick that whole process was.
It was quick, right?
Yeah.
I just
For like a very big difference.
go.